Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
All right, fresh from the Labor Day weekend, although I'm going to admit I'm going to sort of ease back in with a little bit of a light show, at least light for me. It'll be a full episode, but I'm going to lean on some public statements that were given by Vice Presidential candidate, Governor of Minnesota Tim Walz yesterday in Wisconsin, and President Joe Biden joining Vice President Kamala Harris on the campaign trail in Pittsburgh last night as well. I contrast this because while President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Governor Tim Walz are out there campaigning during Labor Day yesterday, the Trump-Vance ticket was nowhere to be found. I mean, I guess that stands to reason that on Labor Day, you can't have your folks out trying to corral the labor vote when your presidential candidate, the former president and top of the ticket, said this to Elon Musk a few weeks back.
I mean, I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say, you want to quit? They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike and you say, that's okay. You're all gone. You're all gone. So every one of you is gone and you are the greatest. You would be very good. Oh, you would love it.
So, yeah, I guess I would be laying low at Mar-a-Lago as well if that were my position on labor. Anyway, Vice Presidential candidate, current Governor of Minnesota Tim Walz, was in Wisconsin yesterday. Here are his statements.
Happy Labor Day, folks. I have to tell you, I can't think of a better way to spend it than at Labor Fest right over here. I'm grateful for that. To Rich, the iron workers, they're lucky to have you. I appreciate that kind introduction. As always, to the mayor, thank you. Every time we come here, there's a big, enthusiastic crowd fighting for Middle America. So thank you, Mayor. And I had the privilege for years to serve in the House with your United States Senator, who is absolutely incredible. Send Tammy Baldwin back to the Senate. And it was a wonderful sight to come off that plane at the airport and be met with one of my dear friends and my colleague, Gwen Moore. There are many reasons to thank Wisconsin, but I have to tell you, on behalf of America, thank you for Tony Evers, a national treasure. And the First Lady of Wisconsin, Kathy Evers, thank you. And I have to tell you, when we have President Harris, she is going to need to have a majority in the House of Representatives. Send Peter Barca to Congress again. Send Peter Barca to Congress. Thank you to County Executive David Crawley for looking out for folks every day. And a special thank you to President Fent and the Milwaukee Area Labor Council for the invitations and putting this on. Point of personal privilege, a thank you to Minnesota's First Lady, my wife Gwen. She brings the fire. She brings the fire. To everyone who can't be here because they're working. They're working overtime. They're working jobs. They're working to keep us safe. They're working to keep the country running. Let's give them a big round of applause. And to all of you, could have been anywhere today. Last big fling of summer, could have been out doing something, could have been out boating, could have been doing anything. You came here for the reason the Vice President always said. It's beautiful and simple. You love this country, so you came here. Thank you. If you haven't heard, I was a teacher and a coach for a lot of years. And what goes with making a career out of teaching and coaching is I was a dues-paying member of my union. I always feel like maybe we should elect a few more dues-paying members to elected positions. So start thinking about it, folks. Start thinking about running. I can remember, and this was one, Republicans came up to me in one of my campaigns, and they said, Tim is in the pocket of organized labor. I said, that's a damn lie. I am the pocket. I am the pocket. And I told them, if you want to attack me for standing up for collective bargaining, for fair wages, for safe working conditions, for health care and retirement, you roll the damn dice. I'll take my chances on that. Wow. I'll take my chances.
So refreshing to hear a Democrat embracing labor in such a strong way.
Folks, you know this. Unions and organized labor are more popular today than at any time in our lifetimes. Any time. And you know why? because it's union halls where the purest form of democracy is practiced. The opportunity to speak your mind about your job, the opportunity to elect your leadership, the opportunity to talk about the things that impact your life and then go advocate for it. That's how democracy's supposed to work. That's how it's supposed to work. And I can tell you, Vice President Harris, as a protector of democracy, when we win this election, we'll have your back just like you've had our back. This is where we tell the story to our relatives. As California Attorney General, Kamala Harris sued the big banks because they were mismanaging pension funds. And when she won her court case, millions of dollars went back to working people and their families on their pensions that they earned. Vice President Harris was the deciding vote on the American Rescue Plan that kept workers on the job and the public safe during the pandemic. It was Vice President Harris and President Biden that protected over 1 million workers' pensions and retirees that we got back. And it's not bragging if it's true. She was part of the most pro-union administration in American history. From sticking up for workers to voting for fair legislation to walking picket lines, she was there with workers every step of the way. So look, some people want to tell you got to elect them because they're the only people that can save things. They're the ones that did things. They're the ones who did this. We know exactly who built this country. It was labor that built this country. We also know it was unions that built the blue wall too, people, just to be very clear. If those guys think there's a crack in the blue wall, they are sadly mistaken, Governor Evers. They are sadly mistaken, Governor Whitmer. They are sadly mistaken with Governor Shapiro because the blue wall stands firm. It stands with workers. Really simple. It's really simple. When unions are strong, America is strong. We know that in Minnesota. As governor of Minnesota, it was my privilege to sign one of the biggest and best pro-worker packages in Minnesota history. We made it easier to form a union, not harder. We strengthened worker protections. You should be able to go home at the end of the day without getting killed on the job. That's a basic line. And in Minnesota, it's against the law to put your workers in a room and do an anti-union meeting. You can't do that. You can't do that. So today, you see it, Minnesota is one of the best states in the country for workers. But guess what? We're a top 5 best state for business, too. You don't have to choose between workers and business. You can do both. You can do both.
That is a huge pitch point for him to make on the campaign trail.
Just think what would happen if Wisconsin, if you gave this man a majority in the House and Senate. What would happen here? Just imagine. One vote. One Senate vote in Minnesota was the difference between that. One Senate vote in Minnesota gave us paid family and medical leave. One vote expanded health care. One vote made sure that we're addressing climate change. That's what you can give to this governor, and that's what we need to give to Vice President Harris. That's our vision for the country. Now look, we don't expect everybody to think like us. Now we know that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, they have a little bit different vision of America. I do say this. He does know something about working people, Donald Trump does. He knows how to take advantage of them. That's what he knows how to do. Every single chance these guys have gotten, they've waged wars on workers in the middle class. As president, Trump blocked overtime for millions of workers. Hell, why pay the bills? He doesn't pay his own. Why should we pay somebody for overtime? What are they going to do? That's what they do. He opposed efforts to raise the minimum wage, for God's sakes. That shouldn't be that difficult. If people put in an honest day's work, they should receive an honest day's pay. And look, I know Wisconsin knows this. Again, give him a working majority because he's a guy who supports so-called right-to-work laws that deprives unions of the funds they need. Everybody here today knows what right to work really means. It means the right to work for less money. It means the right to work in dangerous situations. It means the right to work with no pensions. That's what right to work means. It doesn't help with our ability to collectively bargain and to fight with the dignity of work that we know every single person in America deserves. So look, I sometimes say this. We're running for something. We're running to run forward to the future. And I don't think it's always great to run against something, but I do think it's important to be informed. If you think those guys were bad the last time he was in the White House, just wait if he gets another shot at it. And again, they have told us exactly what they're going to do. The goals in Project 2025 are clear. It should be subtitled, How to Screw the Working People. That's how it should be listed. When you make it harder to unionize, you make it harder on all workers. Allowing employers to cut overtime pay or even eliminate it. Look, Project 2025 is even going after the 40-hour work week. Let's all be very clear. It's the folks standing here and those whose shoulders we stand on gave us the 40-hour work week and the weekend. So thank you, labor. Somebody said, what's next, child labor? Hell yeah, it's in there. That's what they've got in there. You see states doing that, putting our children at risk. That's what they'll do. So look, they'll go after things like Social Security and Medicare. And I keep saying this. Repeal the Affordable Care Act, go back to no pre-existing condition protections. And even if you're not on the ACA, you know somebody who relies on it. And here's what I say. They don't think a damn about Social Security because I guess if you've got $1 billion, you don't care if your Social Security check shows up. But I tell you who does, my mom. She pays the bills with that in the heat and buys food with her Social Security check. And she worked for it and earned it. That's how it works. Look, I know this is preaching to the choir, but we got about 64 days to sing, choir. We got 64 days to get to our relatives, to talk to them, to tell them what's out there. Look, this guy has made it clear how he stands. He's sitting down at Mar-a-Lago after he got elected president, and this was his exact quote. He's talking to a bunch of folks at Mar-a-Lago. You're rich as hell, and we're going to give you a tax cut. At the same time, he was telling workers they get paid too much already. That's who this guy is. You tell me who in Wisconsin is sitting around saying, damn, I wish they'd give billionaires tax cuts and screw me over. Damn, I wish they'd take my health care away. I wish they'd underfund my public school. I wish they would make my job more difficult and more dangerous. And then at the end of the day, I wish they'd make me work till I'm 75 years old. No one's saying that. No one's asking for that agenda. What they're asking for is to be treated fairly with dignity. That's what we have.
Strong statement there from Governor Tim Walz from Minnesota, the vice presidential nominee for the Democratic Party, speaking at Labor Fest in Wisconsin yesterday. This is The Ron Show on America One Radio and Progressive Voices via TuneIn. You can follow the show on your preferred social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Twitter X, Instagram Threads, at Ron Show ETL. Contrasting Tim Walz, Kamala Harris, President Joe Biden out greeting labor to throngs of support yesterday with Ohio Senator and Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance being booed at a firefighter union event in Boston just days ago.
Guys, thank you so much. Well, Semper Fi, guys. We got some. It sounds like we got some fans and some haters. That's okay. Listen to what I have to say.
Awkward.
President Trump and I are proud to be the most pro-worker Republican ticket in history, and I want to talk about why we're fighting for working people, why we're going to fight for unions and non-union alike.
They ain't buying it, bro. Meanwhile, back to Labor Fest yesterday in Wisconsin, Vice Presidential candidate Governor Tim Walz from Minnesota.
I remember a time when Republicans talked about things like freedom, they meant it. They would never turn their back on our allies. But that's not these guys. Trump and Vance, when they talk about freedom, means government should have the freedom to invade every corner of our life. They talk about small government, small enough to be in your bedroom, small enough to be in your exam room, small enough to be in your library, telling you the things that you should make decisions about. So let's be very clear. Where I come from and where you come from as neighbors, we respect differences. That's your opinion. Look, we're sitting here together, Brewers and Twins fans, Vikings and Packers. But on things like health care and what books I read and democracy, we all live by that very simple golden rule. Mind your own damn business. Mind your own business. Your Republican neighbors want to live that way. We have to tell that story. But look, I agree with this. We have a responsibility to tell people not just what we're against, but what we're for. So let me just take a second here to tell you exactly what Vice President Harris and I will do. As president, Vice President Harris will sign the PRO Act, make it easier to form unions, period. And you know what comes out of that? You can collectively bargain. You can go do the work to get fair wages, safer working conditions, good health care, and a good pension. I saw last week the Wall Street Journal was trying to say, because they did a story, that apparently I am the poorest person to ever run for vice president. But then they did another story that said, oh, he's actually richer than his statement says, because he has, and I quote, like this is an evil thing, a defined benefit pension plan. That is my wish for every American, to have a defined benefit pension plan. We'll lower taxes on working families, and we can make corporations pay their fair share. Look, they're doing really well. They can pay their fair share because guess what? We have a saying in Minnesota, when everybody does better, everybody does better. It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult. And you can be sure we'll keep fighting for Social Security and Medicare, and we're damn sure not going to taxes for the wealthy and raise the age on Medicare and Social Security. That will not happen. So look, we got it in Minnesota, and we want it for everybody. We're going to fight for paid family and medical leave for everybody in this country. Shouldn't be asking so much, spend a little time with your child after they're born, or if you've got chemotherapy treatments, to be able to not lose your house because you're getting health care. That's not that difficult. Well, we want to make sure that you don't just get by, but that you can get ahead and thrive. And be clear, we can't state this enough. I hope you're getting sick and tired of hearing about it. This is the defining issue around freedom and the differences of it. We, Vice President Harris, myself, and everyone here believes that you should be free to make your own health care decisions, not politicians. It's simple. And to all of you here and my teacher friends, education should be a pathway to a thriving future, not crippling debt. And while we're on schools and kids, we believe our kids should be free to go to school without worrying about being shot dead in the halls. And I'm going to continue to say it. I'm a veteran and damn proud of 24 years of that. I'm a hunter and pretty good at that. And every year they do a congressional trap shoot. I was one of the best shots in Congress for all those years running. I got the trophies to prove it. I can outshoot these guys. So I support the Second Amendment. But I am not going to stand around and let people hide behind that when our first responsibility is to protect our children. That's our first responsibility. That's our plan, and we're proud of it. Trump, he's going to keep hiding behind that. He says he doesn't know anything about this Project 2025, doesn't know a damn thing about it. Here's what I say. I coach football long enough to know you take the time to draw up a playbook, you're damn sure going to use it. You are damn sure going to run those plays, and you know how it starts. So you ask yourself, who's the right leader for our country? Kamala Harris, who has spent decades putting criminals behind bars, or Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, who get up every single morning, run to the nearest camera, and whine how they're being treated unfairly. I'll damn sure guarantee you, when they wake up in the morning, they're not thinking about you. You can be sure of that. They've never thought about you. Since the very beginning, Donald Trump has been running on the politics of fear. Look, I know something about that. I supervised the lunchroom for a bunch of years. Fear. Fear is a good short-term motivator, but it doesn't inspire people. It doesn't change their behaviors. And what I did know about that lunchroom, too, is the bullies who want to instill fear, they're the first ones to find out what happens when the tide turns. He's running scared now. He's running scared. So look, all of the policy positions, all of the good policy positions, all of the things we know to be true, but we get a rare opportunity, too, to put an end to that divisiveness, to put it behind us, a future where we work together. And as I said, there's a lot of differences in here. We're a big tent party. We got a lot of differences that can come together. But at the end of the day, to find that new way forward, we put those differences aside and let's get together for 64 days to take this country forward. Let's move on. It isn't just idle talk. When we come together, we can do amazing things. So here's the deal. Sisters and brothers in labor, it's time to get off the sidelines and get on the field. I know you're busy. I know you've got full-time jobs. You got kids going back to school. Thank God they're going back to school. Teachers, nothing on that. But you've got things to do. But this is it. And when people come up to me and I hear it and I know they want to make politics ugly, they want to make it dismissive, and they want to make it to the point where people just throw up their hands and say, look, I'm just not that into politics. My response when somebody tells me they're just not that into politics is this: too damn bad politics is into you. And if you want it in your exam room, if you want it in your bedroom, if you want it in your labor hall, then set back. But if you want to take control of things and you want to make sure that we have government serves the people, not the other way around, then you need to get out there. Whether it's labor rights, middle class rights, having corporations pay their fair share, all those things that impact our lives means we need you on the team, and we need you now.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz making an impassioned plea at Labor Fest in Wisconsin for labor to get in the game as Election Day draws nearer. This is The Ron Show.
This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
So I want to wrap with what's left of Tim Walz's statements, his remarks yesterday in Wisconsin at Labor Fest. But I also want to share with you the Truth Social tweets that Donald Trump shared yesterday from the cozy confines of Mar-a-Lago, where he decided to spend Labor Day instead of out pressing the flesh with the working class. Happy Labor Day to all of our American workers who represent the shining example of hard work and ingenuity. He continues, under Comrade Kamala Harris, all Americans are suffering during the holiday weekend. High gas prices, they're actually pretty low, comparable to... anyway, yeah, I mean, like in Metro Atlanta, you leave the city, and oh my God, I'm finding it under $3 a gallon. Okay, all right. So he says high gas prices, transportation costs are up. Well, that goes with the gas prices, but whatever. Grocery prices through the roof. We just had an admission from a Kroger executive last week that they were essentially price gouging on essential items, and of course, Republicans don't want to do anything about price gouging. Every chance they get to vote on action on price gouging, they vote against it. He goes, we can't keep living under this weak and failed leadership. He went on in a separate post and said, in my first term, we achieved major successes to protect American workers. He goes on, by negotiating free and fair trade deals, passing the USMCA, and giving businesses and their workers the tools to thrive. That's kind of that trickle-down methodology, though. When you give businesses incentives, tax breaks, et cetera, and so on, that's deemed pro-business. But is it pro-worker? If you don't incentivize the business to share with the worker, then I would argue it's not. It's a lot like trickle-down. You give millionaires and billionaires tax cuts, and it's supposed to trickle down. It just never does. I mean, we've been waiting 40-plus years for that to happen. The middle class instead has been decimated. He continues, we invested heavily in education and job training programs for those who wish to expand upon their abilities, except for student loan debt. Didn't want to deal with that. He also, by the way, we've talked about this at great length, how he likes to brag about HBCU funding, except that he killed the funding and Congress reauthorized funding. And then, of course, the Biden-Harris administration has supersized HBCU funding since then. Let's see. He goes on, and be successful in an industry that they love. But Kamala and Biden have undone all of that. They've undone all of it. The USMCA is wait, it still is? Huh. And as I mentioned, the funding for HBCUs and student debt forgiveness. But Kamala and Biden have undone all of that. He says, when I return to the White House, we will continue upon our successes by creating the environment that ensures all workers and businesses have the opportunity to prosper and achieve their American dream. We will make America great again. Never mind the manufacturing jobs that were lost under his presidency, that were actually in decline before the pandemic. Never mind the 800,000 manufacturing jobs created under Biden-Harris and continuing. Anyway, here are the last few minutes of Tim Walz's statement, and then we'll get to Biden and VP Harris. By the way, Joe Biden looked like a man who had only one job and actually took a little bit of off time here recently. I'm telling you, in this rally, if you see, I'll share the video in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. He looks 5 years younger, just taking a little break. maybe it's just not a wise idea for an 81-year-old man to have the hardest job on the planet, and running for re-election and not taking a little time off. He looks like a refreshed, reinvigorated guy. I'm not saying he should be running. I'm just saying he looks a lot better. Anyway, here's the rest of Tim Walz's statement, his remarks yesterday at Labor Fest in Wisconsin.
So here's what we're going to do. We're doing it because we believe in the promise of America. We're doing it for folks, and some of you, I know you have your barbecues, and folks come and they say, oh, I wish I was in a union and had pension plan and things like that. And once again, yeah, we wish you were too. We wish you were too. Talk about the things we can make a difference. We're going to have to fight for this. It's not going to be easy. We're coming from behind, as I said, but we're comfortable in that position because I talk about this. The vice president oftentimes says this, when we fight, we win. We know that that's the case. You know what? When you talk to labor, you don't have to talk about fighting. You've been fighting your whole damn lives. It's what you do. You fight for everything you get. They're not going to give you that raise unless you go in there. They're not going to give you those protections unless you go in there. So look, if we're going to do this thing, I keep saying this. We got 64 days. You've heard me say this. Some people are taking this pretty seriously, me included on this, is we'll sleep when we're dead. Now is not the time. Now is not the time. We need to knock the doors, make the phone calls, register people to vote, give what we can, encourage people to get out there, have the conversations. And the one thing that the vice president does it all with is hard work can be good work. Difficult tasks can be done with a sense of joy because our country depends on it. Our children depend on it. And to be quite candid, the rest of the world depends on us to stand up and vote for a pro-democracy, pro-worker, pro-future candidate. So it's our time. So let me say, when we fight, let's go.
All right, now let's quickly pivot to last night in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, well past Joe's bedtime, when President Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were on the campaign trail together. Let's pick up at this point.
The first decision I made, the nominee in 2020, was selecting her as my vice president. And by the way, it was the single best decision I made as President of the United States of America. I was watching something sent to me when they asked Barack. They said, Barack picked me as vice president because he knew I could be president. Well, I know she'll be a good president. I know it. I've watched it when all the experts, foreign and domestic policy, would give us advice. Then we'd sit alone in a room, and she has a backbone like a ramrod. And she has the moral compass of a saint. This woman knows what she's doing. Folks, I promise you, if you elect Kamala Harris as president, it'll be the best decision you will have ever made. And Kamala believes as I do. The unions are the spine of this economy. She'll be a historic pro-union president. So, folks, we got one more job to do together. Let me ask you. Are you ready to fight? Yeah! Are you ready to win? Yeah! Are you ready to elect Kamala Harris our next president of the United States of America? And in the process, are you ready to make Donald Trump a loser again? I've never been more optimistic about America because we have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America. There's nothing, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, there's nothing beyond our capacity. Nothing. When we do it together. And that means elect my friend, our great Vice President, President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
All right, so we're going to pick up with Kamala Harris just as she takes the dais. When we take a quick break, come right back here. You're listening to The Ron Show on America One Radio and Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Final few minutes of today's Ron Show, our post-Labor Day episode. Kamala Harris speaking after Joe Biden introduced her, and he looked vim and vigor. So happy to see him, actually, looking that well. She spoke at a labor rally in Pittsburgh. Here are her remarks.
It is good to be in the House of Labor. And it is good to be back at IBEW Local 5. And can we please give it up again for our President, Joe Biden? Now, I don't have to tell the brothers and sisters of labor that you really get to know somebody when you're in the middle of a fight. When times are hard, when the forces are mighty, when people don't believe something can get done and they have 1,000 excuses for why it can't get done. And I have spent more time with this extraordinary human being when the cameras were not in the room, when the stakes were high, when the heat was intense. And Joe Biden has always stood with the workers of America and labor unions of America. Always. Always. I've been with him when he'll bring folks into the Oval Office. And you know how Joe can get sometimes. He doesn't spare words. It's good that sometimes the cameras are not in the room when he has those conversations. Because the thing about the Joe Biden I know, and I know you know, because he has been a friend of labor for so long, for his whole life. Joe Biden can be quite impatient. And that's a good thing for that kind of leader. Quite impatient. And I say to all of the friends here, the press that's in the room, history will show what we here know. Joe Biden has been one of the most transformative presidents in the United States that we have ever witnessed. And it comes from his heart. And you know, Joe and I talk a lot about the fact that we are so proud to be the most pro-union administration in America's history. And it is thanks to your leadership. And as we know, Joe's still got a lot of work to do, so let's also understand that. So I want to thank all the incredible leaders who are here today, including the Governor Shapiro, Lieutenant Governor Davis, Senator Casey, who we will re-elect this November, Mayor Gainey, President Schuller, President Cooper, all the leaders of labor who are here, all the union members who are here. So I'll just get right to a few points. I love Labor Day. I love celebrating Labor Day. And Pittsburgh, of course, is a cradle of the American labor movement. It is the birthplace of the AFL, headquarters of the Steelworkers, home to Firefighters Local 1, and of course the historic IBEW Local 5. For more than 150 years, the brothers and sisters of labor have helped lead the fight for fair pay, better benefits, and safe working conditions. And every person in our nation has benefited from that work. You know, everywhere I go, I tell people, you may not be a union member, but you better thank unions for that 5-day work week. Thank unions for sick leave. Thank unions for paid family leave. Thank unions for your vacation time. Because when union wages go up, everybody's wages go up. When union workplaces are safer, all workplaces are safer. When unions are strong, America is strong. And we are clear. Not only has Pittsburgh shaped the history of America's labor movement, today you are also shaping its future. In 2021, with my dear friend, the Secretary Marty Walsh, who the President appointed to be Secretary of Labor, he and I hosted a meeting right here in this local, and it was part of the White House Labor Task Force that I lead. That day, we met with a group of computer programmers who were working to form a union. 1 month later, they signed their contract and became one of the first technology unions in our nation. Standing on the shoulder of all those who have been here and fought the good fight. So Pittsburgh, I remind us of that to say together, we are fighting to build an economy that works for all working people. And that has always been the vision of the labor movement. And that is the vision of our campaign. You know, in this election, there are two very different visions for our nation. One, ours, focused on the future. The other, focused on the past. We fight for the future. We fight for a future of dignity, respect, and opportunity for all people. We fight knowing it's some backward thinking for those folks who have been suggesting for years that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down. You know, that's the stuff they're pushing. That the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, when we know the true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up. Who you lift up. Do you fight for workers? Do you fight for families? Do you fight for those who must be seen and heard and deserve the dignity that comes with hard work? That's what we fight for. And when you know what you stand for, you know what to fight for. So we're 64 days out from this election. Ballots in Pennsylvania will start dropping in 14 days. 14 days. And this election is, as much as anything else, a fight for the promise of America. For the promise of America. We love our country. We love our country. And we know it is one of the highest forms of patriotism to fight for the ideals of our country. And that's what this election is about. And about the promise of America. And I don't need to tell unions what the promise looks like. It's what you do every day. But as we fight to move forward, Donald Trump is trying to pull us backward. Including back to a time before workers had the freedom to organize.
He's going to jail.
Well, the courts will handle that, and we will handle November. How about that? We'll handle November. Let the courts handle that other thing. But we're not going back. We're not going back. We're not going back. And one of the ways we're going to guarantee we don't go back is that we remember. Remember, as president, Donald Trump blocked overtime benefits for millions of workers. He opposed efforts to raise the minimum wage. As the president said, he appointed union busters to the National Labor Relations Board. And don't forget, he supported so-called right-to-work laws. And if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he intends to give more tax cuts to billionaires and big corporations. He intends to cut Social Security and Medicare. He wants to impose what in effect would be a national sales tax, I call it the Trump national sales tax, on everyday products and basic necessities that would cost a typical American family, the economists have said this, almost $4,000 a year. He intends to repeal the Affordable Care Act. and take us back to what we remember, because it wasn't that long ago, was a time when insurance companies could deny people with pre-existing conditions. You remember what that was? Children with asthma, breast cancer survivors, grandparents with diabetes. Well, look, America has tried those failed policies before, and we are not going back. We are not going back. Not going back. And instead, we fight for a future where no person has to go broke just because they get sick. And so, building on the work of President Joe Biden and I and the work we have done in the White House, we will continue to strengthen the Affordable Care Act and make prescription drugs affordable for all Americans. We fight for a future where every worker has the freedom to organize, and we will pass the PRO Act and end union busting once and for all, and Bob Casey will help us do that. We see and know and fight for a future where every person has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead. And so we will continue to build what I call an opportunity economy, so that every American has an opportunity to buy a home or start a business or build intergenerational wealth and have a future that matches their dreams and ambitions and aspirations. Because, of course, that's the nature of who we are as Americans. We have dreams. We can see what is possible unburdened by what has been. We have aspirations. We have ambitions. And the system that is a good system is one that supports that and allows people the opportunity to go where they can see and imagine themselves to be. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about an opportunity economy. We fight for a future where every senior can retire with dignity. And so we will continue to defend Social Security and Medicare and pensions, and pensions, and pensions. And we will continue to strengthen America's manufacturing sector. And on that point, the president mentioned it. U.S. Steel is an historic American company, and it is vital for our nation to maintain strong American steel companies, and I couldn't agree more with President Biden. U.S. Steel should remain American-owned and American-operated. And I will always have the back of America's steelworkers. All of America's workers.
Vice President Kamala Harris on the campaign trail with President Joe Biden yesterday in Pittsburgh. That's going to do it for The Ron Show. Back tomorrow, 9 to 10 a.m., 5 to 6 p.m. on America One Radio, 7 to 8 p.m. at Progressive Voices via TuneIn and via podcast. Show notes at RonShowATL.com. Have a great Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow.